The Viridian Dominion had conquered 17 star systems when they stumbled upon Earth. Their crystalline ships tore through the atmosphere like diamond knives, landing in perfect geometric formations across every major city. Commander Calrex stood on the bridge of the flagship subjugator, mandibles twitching in anticipation as he surveyed the primitive blue world. Another livestock species, he clicked to his second-in-command, Officer Nix. Begin the harvesting protocols. Humans were supposed to be easy prey, small, weak, fragile. The Viridians had classified Earth as a Class 3 acquisition, minimal resistance expected. They were catastrophically wrong. Meredith Orion was tending her garden in rural Montana when the skies darkened. At 43, she'd spent her life as an agricultural geneticist before retiring to experiment with her own hybrid plants. As the crystalline ships descended, she didn't run. Instead, she calmly walked inside her modest home and retrieved the rifle her grandfather had taught her to shoot with when she was 8. Across the planet, humans reacted not with the expected terror, but with something the Viridians hadn't encountered. In their conquests, calculated defiance. In New Shanghai, quantum physicist Dr. Avery Blackwood was presenting his theoretical work on interdimensional harmonics when the invasion began. As panicked colleagues fled the conference center, he remained, hastily modifying equations on his tablet. Something about the invaders' technology triggered a connection in his mind, a vulnerability he could exploit. The Viridian ground forces emerged from their ships expecting to herd docile creatures. They carried neural disruptors, weapons designed to disable higher brain functions while leaving motor skills intact, perfect for creating compliant slaves. The first wave of disruptors fired. Nothing happened. Commander Calrex received the field reports with disbelief. Impossible. Their neural pathways should have collapsed instantly. What the Viridians didn't understand was humanity's unique brain structure, evolved on a planet with higher background radiation than any species they'd encountered before. The neural architecture that resulted was chaotic, redundant, and remarkably resistant to the calculated disruption patterns the Viridians relied upon. When the second attack came, this time with conventional weapons, humanity was ready. Admiral Isola Reed of the United Earth Defense Force issued the order that would later be immortalized in history. They came expecting livestock, show them predators instead. The resistance was not centralized but distributed. 1,000 small rebellions erupting simultaneously. Civilians armed themselves with whatever they could find. Military units abandoned conventional tactics for guerrilla warfare. Scientists worked feverishly to understand the alien technology. Meredith discovered that her experimental plants, genetically modified to survive in harsh conditions, emitted compounds that corroded the crystalline Viridian armor on contact. Within days, her formula was being mass-produced in makeshift labs across the continent. By the end of the first week, the Viridians had lost 28% of their ground forces and were completely baffled by human resilience. Commander. Calrex stared at the battle projections with his 4 eyes widened in disbelief. What manner of species is this? The Viridian War Council gathered in the gleaming chamber of the subjugator. 7 crystalline beings sat in formation, their translucent bodies pulsing with bioluminescent anger. Intelligence Officer Nix projected images of human resistance fighters. These creatures should have been perfect for neural harvesting, Nix explained. Instead, they've destroyed 43 harvester units and compromised our southern hemisphere deployment. Commander Calrex clicked his mandibles in frustration. Escalate to Phase 2. Release the Mind Shredders. The Mind Shredders were the Viridians' most feared weapon, parasitic organisms that invaded the central nervous system and converted the victim into a living relay for the Viridian hive mind. Once infected, no species had ever broken free. On Earth, humanity braced for the second wave. Dr. Blackwood had assembled an unlikely team at the former Princeton University campus. Kestrel Zhao, a 17-year-old prodigy in xenobiology, former Special Forces Commander Leif Thorson, and neurosurgeon Dr. Imara Njeri. The Viridians communicate through crystalline resonance, Blackwood explained, pointing to the frequency patterns on his screen. Their technology is essentially alive, silicon-based consciousness. If we can disrupt that resonance, Kestrel finished his thought, we could create feedback loops in their neural networks. Across the planet, other groups were making similar discoveries. In Kyoto, engineer Haruto Morikawa had dismantled a Viridian scout ship and was reverse engineering its propulsion system. In Lagos, a team led by Dr. Folami Adebayo had captured a Viridian soldier and was studying its physiological responses. The mine shredders were deployed at dusk, crystalline spores that rained from the sky like glittering snow. Beautiful. Deadly. They sought heat signatures and neural activity, drifting toward population centers. Meredith Orion, now working with a team of botanists in an underground facility, made the crucial discovery. They're silicon-based, she announced, studying the spores under a microscope. And my hybrids produce enough hydrofluoric acid to dissolve them. The warning spread through improvised communication networks. Stay indoors. Cover all skin. Spray. The Orion compound on any exposed surfaces. When the mine shredders descended on Chicago, they encountered buildings coated with the corrosive plant extract. The spores dissolved upon contact, turning to harmless dust. In areas where the mine shredders successfully infected humans, the Viridians encountered another surprise. Human brains, with their chaotic neural patterns, proved difficult to control. The infected retained fragments of self-awareness, fighting the alien influence. Leif Thorson volunteered to be infected under controlled conditions. As the mind shredder took hold, Dr. Njeri monitored his brain activity. "It's extraordinary," she whispered, watching the patterns shift. "His brain is adapting, compartmentalizing. The alien consciousness can't fully integrate." After 72 hours, Thorson spoke, his voice strained but his own. "I can hear them, their plans, their fears." He locked eyes with Blackwood. "They're terrified of us." Commander Calrex received the reports with mounting horror. Not only were humans resisting the mine shredders, but they were beginning to understand Viridian communication. The hunters were becoming the hunted. By the third month of the invasion, Earth had transformed. Cities became fortresses of innovation. The former boundaries of nations dissolved as humanity united against the common threat. Commander Calrex watched from orbit as his ground forces faced increasingly sophisticated resistance. "They're adapting too quickly," Nix reported. "They've started using our own technology against us." The truth was worse than Nix knew. Dr. Blackwood and Kestrel had successfully created a device that disrupted Viridian crystalline resonance, effectively scrambling their communication. Haruto Morikawa had replicated their propulsion system, enabling human ships to engage the Viridians in atmosphere. Dr. Adebayo's team had developed a toxin specifically tailored to Viridian biology. But the most devastating development came from the most unexpected source. Meredith Orion's rural compound had expanded into a sprawling research center. Her hybridization techniques had progressed beyond simple chemical defenses. She had begun incorporating Viridian crystalline structures into plant genomes, creating living weapons that sought out and neutralized the invaders. "Life adapts," she explained to Admiral Reed during an inspection. "That's what these aliens don't understand. Life on Earth has survived 5 mass extinction events. We evolved to persist." The tide turned dramatically when Leif Thorson and 11 other volunteers who had survived mine shredder infection formed the resonance unit. They could intercept and interpret Viridian communications, providing invaluable intelligence. "They're planning to deploy their final weapon," Thorson warned during an emergency council meeting. A resonance cascade that will attempt to shatter our planet's crust. The Viridian War Council had indeed made this desperate decision. Commander Calrex stood before the Supreme Coordinator, who had arrived from the Viridian homeworld to personally oversee Earth's subjugation. "This species cannot be harvested," Calrex reported. "They must be eliminated." The Supreme Coordinator's crystalline form pulsed with cold light. "Then we will use the World Breaker. Prepare the alignment." The World Breaker was an array of 9 ships positioned to create a resonance field that could destabilize a planet's tectonic structure, literally shaking it apart from within. It had been used only twice in Viridian history against civilizations that proved too dangerous to conquer. Humanity had less than 72 hours to prevent extinction. Dr. Blackwood worked feverishly with his team to expand their resonance disruptor. "If we can amplify this 1,000-fold and deploy it globally," Kestrel shook her head, "the power requirements would be impossible." "Not necessarily," Haruto interjected through the video link. "What if we use their own ships as power sources? Around..." The world-captured Viridian technology was being repurposed. Small victories had yielded crucial components. Meredith's crystalline plants had begun to form a global network, their roots extending deep into the Earth, creating a living defensive grid that could detect and respond to Viridian energy signatures. As the Viridian ships moved into World Breaker formation, humanity prepared its desperate countermeasure. Every functioning power grid on Earth was redirected to support Blackwood's resonance disruptor. Meredith's crystalline plant network would serve as the distribution system. The fate of Earth would be decided in the next 24 hours. The World Breaker formation locked into position, 9 massive crystalline ships forming a perfect geometric pattern above Earth. Inside the subjugator, Commander Calrex received the final authorization from the Supreme Coordinator. "Begin the resonance cascade," the Supreme Coordinator ordered. "Eradicate this aberration." On Earth, Dr. Blackwood stood in the Global Defense Command Center, surrounded by screens showing the Viridian formation. "They're powering up," he said, grimly. "Resonance builds in 3 minutes." Admiral Reed gave the order. "Activate Project Echo." Project Echo, humanity's desperate countermeasure, began with a subtle vibration. Meredith's crystalline plant network, now spanning every continent, began to pulse with precisely calibrated frequencies. The plants weren't just defensive. They had become Earth's nervous system, capable of transmitting the disruptor signal globally. In orbit, Calrex noticed a strange reading on his monitors. "Energy fluctuations on the surface," he reported. "Inconsistent with typical planetary readings." The Supreme Coordinator dismissed the concern. "Proceed with the cascade." The 9 ships began to emit a deep harmonic resonance that penetrated Earth's crust. Earthquakes began almost immediately. San Francisco, Tokyo, Istanbul, all reporting severe seismic activity. But then something unexpected happened. The resonance pattern began to shift. "Sir," Nix reported urgently, "the planetary harmonics are changing. Our resonance is being reflected." Life Thorson and the Resonance Unit had discovered the key to humanity's survival. Having been partially integrated into the Viridian consciousness, they understood that the World Breaker operated on principles of amplification. If the return signal could be properly phased— "We're not trying to block their signal," Thorson explained to Admiral Reed as the ground shook beneath them. "We're redirecting it." Earth itself became the weapon. Meredith's crystalline plants, embedded throughout the planet's crust, captured the Viridian resonance, amplified it through Blackwood's technology, and reflected it back. Not at Earth, but at the Viridian fleet. In space, the 9 ships of the World Breaker formation began to vibrate. Their crystalline structures, designed to channel massive energies, became their weakness as the reflected resonance created internal harmonic distortions. "Impossible," the Supreme Coordinator hissed as fracture lines appeared across the command chamber. "Disengage the cascade," Systems not responding, Calrex reported. The resonance pattern has locked into our control systems. The first ship shattered spectacularly, exploding into billions of crystalline fragments that glittered against the blackness of space. The second followed moments later. The chain reaction had begun. On Earth, despite the earthquakes and destruction, humanity watched with grim satisfaction as their attacker's ultimate weapon became their undoing. 7 ships destroyed. 8. Only the subjugator remained, its structure compromised but intact. Commander Calrex made the decision that would change the course of galactic history. Emergency translocation, all surviving personnel to evacuation. Pods. The Supreme Coordinator's form cracked as the resonance tore through the ship. This is not possible. They are prey. They cannot defeat the Dominion. Calrex looked at the blue planet below, now understanding what they had so fatally misunderstood. They were never prey, he replied as he activated the emergency protocols. We just didn't recognize another apex predator. The aftermath of what became known as the Resonance War transformed Earth. Cities lay in ruins from the Worldbreaker's partial activation. Millions had died. Yet humanity had prevailed against an enemy that had conquered 17 star systems before them. More importantly, they had captured the subjugator, the Viridian flagship, mostly intact. In the 6 months following the victory, humanity underwent a technological renaissance. The reverse engineering of Viridian technology accelerated human development by centuries. Dr. Blackwood's team deciphered their faster-than-light capabilities. Haruto Morikawa built the first human-made crystalline power core. Meredith Orion's crystalline plants evolved into a planetary defense network that could detect approaching ships from light years away. But the most significant development came from the resonance unit. Thorson and his fellow survivors, their minds partially integrated with Viridian consciousness, provided insights into not just their technology, but their civilization. The Dominion controls 3 galactic sectors, Thorson explained to the newly formed Earth Defense Council. They've subjugated dozens of species. But they're not the only power out there. Earth prepared for the inevitable. The Viridians would return, and in greater numbers. Admiral Reed oversaw the construction of Earth's first interstellar fleet. Sleek ships that combined human ingenuity with Viridian technology. We won't wait for them to come back, she declared. Humanity is taking the fight to them. Dr. Njeri had made another crucial discovery by studying the captured Viridians. Their neural structure is rigid, evolutionarily optimized for their original environment. They can't adapt quickly because they've never needed to. That's our advantage. The plan was audacious. Rather than simply defending Earth, humanity would liberate the 17 subjugated systems. They would break the Viridian Dominion itself. The flagship of the human fleet was named Defiance. Its captain was Leif Thorson, whose partial Viridian consciousness made him uniquely qualified to lead the mission. Dr. Blackwood served as chief science officer, with Kestrel as his brilliant protege. Meredith Orion's crystalline technology formed the core of their defensive systems. As the fleet prepared to depart, Admiral Reed addressed the crew of the Defiance. The Viridians chose Earth because they thought we were easy prey. They thought they could enslave humanity. Instead, they've awakened something they never encountered in their conquests, a species that refuses to submit, that adapts to every challenge, that turns defeat into opportunity. Today we bring that same message to the stars. Today we show the galaxy that humanity will not be broken. The Defiance led 12 ships through the first translocation jump, emerging near Proxima Centauri. Long-range sensors detected Viridian activity in the system, a harvesting operation on the 3rd planet. Captain Thorson stood on the bridge, feeling both his human resolve and the echoes of Viridian knowledge in his mind. "Begin liberation protocols," he ordered. "Let's show them what happens when you try to break humanity." The Viridian commander on the harvesting vessel received the approaching signal with disbelief. These ships used Viridian technology but moved with unpredictable patterns. When the communication came through, it was in perfect Viridian harmonic speech. "This is Captain Leif Thorson of Earth Vessel Defiance. Your dominion ends today. Your slaves will be freed. You tried to break us. Now we break your chains." As the human fleet engaged the surprised Viridian harvesters, news spread quickly through the subjugated worlds. The impossible had happened. Someone had defeated the undefeatable Dominion. Hope, long extinguished, began to flicker across 17 star systems. On the bridge of the Defiance, Thorson watched as the Viridian vessels scattered before their attack. He thought of Earth, nearly destroyed, but now stronger than ever. He thought of all the species waiting to be liberated. They thought they could enslave humanity, he said quietly. Now they're the ones who will be broken. The liberation of the galaxy had begun.